Today we have a very simple and yet very profound message. To know Jesus, to claim Jesus, is to love God and love one another. In our first lesson from the book of Acts, we have a snippet of the larger story of the disciples beginning their preaching mission after Pentecost. John and Peter have gone to the temple and raised a ruckus by healing a man who is so thrilled and excited that he's telling everybody. The temple authorities, the leadership, have called these two erstwhile preachers down on the carpet, so to speak, in essence to intimidate them into knocking it off and not doing this preaching anymore. And they quite forthrightly refuse. There's some stuff between the lines here that helps us see the broader picture. Ananias, who is mentioned, was high priest, and after his term, in many ways became the power behind the throne and the father and grandfather of a great dynasty. Caiaphas was his son-in-law, who was high priest from about 18 to 36, the years 18 to 36. So this is most likely the individual who had direct influence over the killing of Jesus. Jonathan is Caiaphas' successor, another member of the extended family. Alexander we don't know very much about. But the point here is that this is a power broker dynasty. Under Roman occupation, the temple leadership, the Sanhedrin, in particular the high priest Ananias and his clan, ran the temple and they ran the country. They abused that position of power to gather great wealth for themselves in conflict with the regulations of the Old Testament about their role as the priests of the temple and the leaders of faith. And this is what engenders a lot of the conflict between Jesus and his preaching and this leadership of the temple, which we see now continuing with Jesus' disciples as they begin their preaching mission. In our second lesson, the author is laying out in very straightforward terms that Christian love has to be lived out in the concrete. If you believe in Jesus, if you accept God's love for you, you have to return that love and you have to live it out for the sake of others. If you have the ability to help, as the letter makes the point, if you're a wealthy person, you have resources and you have opportunities to support and assist and bring healing to those who are in suffering, and you don't do it, you can't honestly claim to have the love of God inside of you. If it's real, you've got to manifest it in your conduct. In our gospel story, we have one of those passages from John that, quite honestly, when I was in the seminary, used to make me crazy. Because John gets into this circular logic, repeating his theme and circling back around it over and over and over again. And when you're sitting in class trying to do this exegesis, it can just be maddening. The punch and the power of this passage, however, is profound. Jesus draws from the Old Testament imagery in a symbol and a story and a parable that we've heard over and over again. Jesus is the good shepherd, the one who properly takes care of the flock. The flock is a symbol through the Old Testament for the people of Israel, for God's people, for those who are of faith. The shepherds are those appointed by God to be the leaders. Sometimes through history they've been great, sometimes not so hot, sometimes real scoundrels. Jesus proclaims, I am the good shepherd. And we hear this story so many times, I think we miss the power of what comes next. I choose to lay down my life for the sheep. He goes on to get into some of John's convoluted storytelling. No one takes it from me. I lay it down, and I take it back up again. I have this power from the Father. In our society, most of us have little or no contact with ranching life. We don't know what it means to raise a herd of steers, or a flock of sheep, or swine, or anything else. In the day, the people of Israel lived a lot closer to the land. A rancher can certainly get hurt or killed on the job trying to manage a herd, especially when some of them get into some kind of dangerous trouble and they're trying to rescue them from that, whether they're tangled in the wire of a fence or stuck in a mud hole or whatever the case may be. But a rancher is not going to make the conscientious decision, today I'm dying for the herd. That's not how you provide for your family. That's not how you feed your children. That's not how you pass on anything for your posterity. And that's exactly where the punch of the story from the gospel comes home. Jesus is the shepherd whose love for God's people is so extravagant that he chooses to die. John starts out his whole gospel with Jesus as the one who lived with God before all creation, who was with God during creation, who comes down to take on the human experience and chooses to die like the rest of us. Worse than the vast majority of us, being executed on a cross. And then returns with a gift and a message about life with God that goes beyond anything we experience in this world. This is the extravagance of love that John, in telling the story of Jesus preaching, expresses for us. I choose to die for what I created. I choose to die for the human race, for the good and the bad, for those who will love me and those who will not. The question laid before us is, will you accept that extravagant love from God? Will you love God in return? Will you love one another? Simple statements, a profound calling, a deep identity that hopefully, truthfully, makes us profoundly different in our everyday lives. The call laid before us is to embrace this again and anew. As we've heard God's Word, as we share the sacrament of Holy Communion in a moment, let's rededicate ourselves today to living in that love, to embracing the extravagance of a Creator who doesn't shy from even the most painful, frightening, and horrific aspects of our human existence. The love of a Creator who calls us to love in return, to love one another, to be marked as people who care, who do what's in their power to make a practical difference, who act out of love, to do what they can to make this world a better place. My brothers and sisters, today we rededicate ourselves to living in this love, to embracing God's love. We do it in our prayers, we do it in our creed, we do it in sharing the sacraments in a few moments. Today, let us embrace this renewal, this refreshment, and this rededication.